welcome, and thank you for joining me today. I'm so grateful to have you here, sharing in this space of growth, healing, and transformation. If you've already subscribed to Loving Everything, thank you for being a part of this beautiful community. Your support means so much, and together, we're creating a space where love in all its forms can be explored and embraced. As you listen to this episode, if it resonates with you, I invite you to like the video and share it with anyone who might benefit from the insights we're diving into today. These conversations are all about expanding our capacity to love ourselves, each other, and the world around us. And if you enjoy what you hear, don't forget to explore my other episodes where we journey into love's deepest, most unconditional forms. Each one is an invitation to reconnect with the parts of yourself that are waiting to be seen, healed, and loved. So thank you for being here. Let's begin. Hi, Tracy.
Hi, Andrea. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm so glad to see you again. And we were just mentioning off air what a year it has been. And, I just recently was able to see you through a really beautiful sound healing experience a couple of weeks ago. And I want to touch on that as well. For anyone watching or listening, Tracy was on a different episode, actually not that many episodes away, called Healing Your Inner Mother, or Healing the Mother Wound. That's what it was.
Which is also about
kind of healing your inner mother, the one that's like nurturing you and or not, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you do really beautiful work. You know a lot about psilocybin and being a facilitator. So we touched on that last time, but we mostly spoke about how you got to that place. So I just wanted to bring you in again and share more about my experience and share more about the work that you do. So we can start there. So can you explain what psilocybin mushroom facilitation is for anyone who's listening and how it has evolved in the context of Portland, Oregon's legal framework?
So psilocybin-containing mushrooms are probably one of the most ancient medicines that are known to humankind. And they grow all over the world, except in Antarctica. So they're found on every continent. And psilocybin mushroom facilitation, the work that I do now, is really about helping to guide people through the healing experience that can unfold with this medicine. And so it's a psychedelic medicine. And because of that, it helps if one is new to navigating their own psyche while in an altered state of consciousness. It just helps to have someone who has been in that territory before. So, I say it's like if you were to go river rafting and you've never been before, you would probably want to hire a guide to help you go down the river and navigate
especially the rapids.
Yes. And like that process too, there is the process really to tangibly speak about it really starts with setting the intention and choosing a date to sit with the medicine. And I say that's a very intuitive, personalized call that each person has to navigate. And so that's usually when people start to seek out someone like me. And then we choose the date, and then we go through a preparation period, which involves just a period of contemplation. Oftentimes it's a time for like a life review, exploring what brings you to this inner work and what your intentions are, how to set intentions, how to prepare oneself physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually for the experience. Practices that we can put into place to help with navigating the experience. Conscious connected breathing, meditation are my favorites to try to teach people if they don't already have that practice. And that serve really well in navigating the journey space. And then there's the journey itself. I take a ceremonial, indigenous honoring approach. I love working with this medicine because it's an earth medicine that comes straight from the ground and feels to me like a real gift from the earth to help aid us humans in our own sort of personal and collective evolution.
Mm-hmm.
And then afterwards, in the psychedelic journey, it's an inherently destabilizing process, which, most people, when they enter into it, it's a welcome destabilization because they have felt relatively stuck for some time in some area. So it shakes things up, but a lot does come up in the process. And so we just want to be gentle with ourselves as we move through the integration process and try to take what can be a flood of insights that come in the journey and really try to anchor them down into our day-to-day life and convert those insights into actionable changes so that we can actually show up differently. And yeah, that's in a nutshell what the work is.
Okay. So,
you asked about the legal, how it is in the legal landscape. So
tell us a little bit about that, because not every state is legal.
Currently, Oregon is the only state that offers legal psilocybin facilitation. Colorado just passed their ballot measure and are in the rules making process right now. So it'll be available there shortly next. And then possibly at the nationwide level, maybe in 2028. It really just depends on how the rest of the clinical trials go. Psilocybin's in phase 3 clinical trials. So, and they're going beautifully. The results are really incredible and really promising. But Oregon passed Measure 109, which is the Psilocybin Services Act, which legalizes what's called adult use of psilocybin. So it's distinct from decriminalization and also distinct from medicalized use. And so with adult use, anyone who's 21 and over can seek out psilocybin facilitation for themselves for any reason at all. It doesn't have to be necessarily for addressing a mental health condition. It could be for any intention if someone's just curious about exploring their mind. And it's one of many tools that are available to us for that. And so with decriminalization, the difference between adult use and decriminalization is that with adult use, you are legally allowed to transact with it. So we can, in Oregon, there are 4 different licenses for one for the growers or cultivators who grow the mushrooms, one for the labs that test the mushrooms for purity and potency, one for the service centers where the facilitation services are held, and then
so
for
kind of like a marijuana. Not clinic, marijuana
dispensary.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's slightly different in that we're not just dispensing the mushrooms. You actually can't access the mushrooms, right?
Without the facilitation.
Yeah. And so it's much more of a service in that way. And so we can have this ecosystem because of the regulations. And then how it is distinguished from medicalization is that you don't need to have a diagnosis. You don't have to have a prescriber who prescribes it to you. It's separate from that whole system.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about dosage? Because I'm sure that some people watching or listening have had experience or have known somebody who has done something. And so what they have in their mind as far as the facilitation process and what it actually is may be something very different. So, could you talk more about that?
I love this topic.
Because we're not trying to make people's brains melt or the walls or the floor breathe.
The floor may breathe.
It's true.
So, it's funny because up until now, we've only had really underground use of mushrooms. So typically it's, I have a friend or a friend of a friend and let's go tripping in the forest or the
we
desert.
Go find them or
some people forage for them. That's that for sure. And then, there's mushroom chocolates, you're at a concert and someone offers you a chocolate or something like that. Most people that I've come across in my facilitation work who've had previous mushroom experiences, they actually have no idea how much they took. And you can't know, if you're just eating a bar of chocolate or something like that.
Or a cap or a stem. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And then if you are eating the whole dried mushrooms, what's been fascinating to learn, at least in the above ground setting, now that we have these inventories in the labs that actually test for the actual milligrams of psilocybin analyte, which is this psychoactive component of the mushroom. And now there are likely other psychoactive components of the mushrooms, but so far we're very focused on psilocybin because that's how humans are. We like to distill it down into one molecule. And but anywho, that does seem to be the primary driver of the psychoactive changes or the hallucinogenic effects, the effects that alter your perception on the journey. And what's been interesting to see is that the milligrams of psilocybin analyte vary up to 3 times per gram of whole dried mushroom. So let's say you have, most people are thinking a hero's dose of mushrooms is 3 grams of whole dried mushroom. Well, the actual milligrams of psilocybin analyte in that 3 grams of whole dried mushroom could be anywhere from as little as 4 milligrams per gram, so 12 milligrams of psilocybin analyte, up to, I've seen 10, 11, 12 milligrams per gram. So 3 times as much. So it's going to be a big difference. And I think this is why sometimes people will often share stories of how they took mushrooms and then nothing happened. Like they feel like they ate a decent amount. They're like, oh, and they may draw the wrong conclusion that, oh, mushrooms don't do anything to me. And it's like, well,
I've never met that person.
Or they'll say like, I'm really sensitive. And I'm like, well, it really depends on the strain. How old, when were the mushrooms grown and how long were they sitting around for?
Yeah.
Because the psilocybin degrades over time. And then a little bit more on the dosing conversation too is the range within the legal framework here is up to 50 milligrams of psilocybin analyte. So that's roughly, 5 to 6 grams of whole dried mushroom. Again, depends on the strain. And people ask me all the time, like, how much should I take?
We had that conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, mostly because of allergies, right?
So if someone has an allergy, a mushroom allergy, for example, and it's not uncommon, then I say, you just don't know how your body is going to respond. So start low, go slow. There's microdosing, which we're talking really small end of the spectrum, less than 1 gram of whole dried mushroom, less than 5 milligrams of psilocybin analyte, up to the macrodose range is usually in the 25 milligrams of psilocybin analyte. So roughly 2 to 3 grams and up. And then there's probably room to play, I think, with the low dose range as well. A lot of people will take a low dose, say between 1 and 2 grams, and go on a wildflower hike or go into the old growth forest, and that can be very therapeutic. And I always say, it depends on your mindset going into sitting with the mushrooms. What setting are you going to be in? Is it a group? Are you solo? Who are you with? And then depth of experience that's desired. And so with macrodose journeys, usually that's someone's looking for really deep transformation somewhere. They are addressing a lot of times some sort of trauma, or there also, I think, is this element of being able to fully surrender to the experience. And in which case dosing does really play a role, where I've seen instances where, somewhat paradoxically, like if you don't dose enough, then people get stuck in the birth canal, as I say. And so your ego, your sort of default mode network, your normal egoic. And when I say ego, I don't mean like, I think the more colloquial way that we throw around ego, like, oh, that guy's kind of an arrogant ego, like has a big ego. I mean your egoic identity, like the way it's your default mode of navigating through the world and identifying, as a person in a place and all that. It's a different definition, but part of what is therapeutic about a large dose of psilocybin, we think, is the shutting down of those normal neural pathways that we inhabit in our normal state of mind day to day. And so it's the quieting down of those networks and allows other neural networks to come online that we don't normally use
and utilize. Yeah.
And there's a heightened state of interconnectivity between different neural networks that normally aren't really speaking to each other. And then there's a period of increased neuroplasticity. That heightened interconnectivity seems to be prolonged even after coming down from the journey and coming back into your sober state again, which is a really interesting kind of new way of addressing our conditioning and patterning when we talk about rewriting things. And so there's sort of an increased ability to do that. There's like a loosening of the hold that we have on the story and the beliefs and the patterns that we subconsciously and unconsciously play out. And so sometimes it helps to have a little bit of a larger dose to have a little bit more of that loosening happen.
So do you allow each person to make the decision, or do you guide that process?
Oh, it's definitely a conversation that we have. And it depends a lot on, I have an extensive, when we're talking about larger doses, that is, an extensive intake process. And so going over, taking a very thorough history, health history, and also going through, whatever it is, the intentions that the person has, trauma history, all of that, how much work you've already done. I have found that among my facilitator friends that I am comfortable letting people go bigger if they feel called to do that. I, of course, have a healthy sense too of who can handle it psychologically. But not everybody needs that too. Sometimes people are, if they all have a history of being sensitive to other substances, then it won't take very much. And so, it's highly personalized, and it's not, it's different than any other medicine in that way.
And would you say, in combination with that it's like an intuitive sense of how open they already are?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, no need to crack someone open when they're already open.
No.
You don't need to hammer it in.
And if someone, there's also under the Oregon legal framework, there's an opportunity to do what's called a booster dose.
Oh, there is.
So you can start off at an amount, and then it usually takes, anywhere from 45 to 60 minutes to feel like if you're launching or not. And so I usually check in at that point. If someone has one, we'll have a booster dose option. And I would say so far, at least about half the time someone will go for the booster dose. And half the time they're like, no, I'm good. I'm about to sail on down this river.
Let's talk about healing for a second. So psilocybin is often described as a powerful healing tool. Can you share some common themes or breakthroughs that you see people experiencing through psilocybin facilitation?
I think about it more as, instead of the medicine healing people, it's actually awakening one's inner healer. And so there's this amazing innate healing intelligence that is built into each and every one of us.
For sure.
Through our evolutionary biology. And the body is so wise when we can fully trust it and feel safe in our bodies. But so many of us have grown up in such a way that we lose that trust. And so I think what the medicine does really is allow that trust to just come back fully online again. And then it's amazing what it really is amazing to see what unfolds where what was once so effortful, find myself saying this all the time, what was once so effortful then becomes effortless. Because it's going down deep into subconscious, even unconscious layers of the mind.
Yes.
Well beyond, we inhabit only about 5% of our thought processes are conscious.
Yeah.
We like to say I'm this awakened conscious person and I'm working on that. And 95%
we have
of
our
what we
toe
do,
in it.
95% of the time we're operating based on subconscious patterns. We're on autopilot. And that's where we can find ourselves accidentally getting triggered emotionally based on usually past wound. And it's a healthy defense mechanism we've developed, but what was once adaptive becomes maladaptive.
Maladaptive. I was going to say healthy yet maladaptive.
So maybe whichever individual trespassed you in the past, it was healthy for you to develop a defense mechanism with that person. But then if we incorrectly pattern match that onto a new person that we're in a relationship with, then we can, we see the effects of where that's not so healthy. And all of that is just unfolding in a split second. And so what's really cool with the psilocybin medicine journeying process is how deep it goes, so that when you are rewriting on a nervous system level at those deeper levels, how it's you're no longer, you may find yourself, the trigger is gone. The wound has been integrated. And I always like to stress too, it's not a miracle silver bullet. You don't come out and you're like, nothing triggers me anymore.
I don't have any issues. It's just rainbows and butterflies.
No, you're still fully human afterwards. But it does, and I say it's like, peeling layers of an onion. But if you go in with a specific intention, it really is amazing how you can reconcile that. I have clients who have unprocessed grief from the death of their mother or a child or something like that. And and that can really weigh on you energetically, you have chronic fatigue and you're just, the color in life is just kind of faded away.
Yeah.
Joy is inaccessible, that sort of thing. And in the process with the mushroom journey, that wound becomes integrated in and the pain processed and integrated in a way that people can come into wholeness again with that. And it's the energy levels that one has. Like one of my clients, he loves, we have ongoing coaching sessions once a month as part of his integration since his journey. And he loves to share how he went from drinking 9 cups of coffee a day and to 1 maybe every 3 days. He's like, I just don't have my caffeine addiction anymore. And that wasn't an intention he was going in with, but he was processing grief in his journey. And that's how it manifested. And so amazing transformation. Other transformations I've seen, you know, people coming off of their antidepressant medications.
Known a lot of those.
Yes, I say my marriage has been saved by it, you know, like, because I'm just I'm just a better person because of this work that I do. I would have totally torched my marriage had I not gone into this work, because I can see the intergenerational cycles playing out, and I find myself having to really navigate that. And the stories I inherited too about relationships and all of that. So, just, and a lot of times it's not so dramatic, other than you're able to, you know, like for me, I'll speak for myself too, that, for example, I started working with these medicines when I was still a surgery resident, and I was so disconnected from my work with my patients. And I was still showing up to work every day like I did before, but my relationship with my work was totally transformed.
Yeah, because were you microdosing during the day?
No, I was not microdosing. It was just from the macrodose journey work.
Oh, in between.
Yeah. It just, you know, with the meditation, the yoga practice, journaling, all the inner like shadow work, inner child work, all of that, just learning about how trauma lives in the body and how it alters the way that we perceive reality and how we show up, and actually how it can cut us off from all of the beauty that is alive in the present moment. I was cut off from all of that because I was in I had this protective shell on without even being consciously aware of it. But as that started to come off, as I was healing, I was connecting with my patients in a way that I never did before. And when someone did express gratitude, I could fully receive it. And so that, you know, these kinds of things, and I don't know that I necessarily outwardly, you know, I still had the same job and showing up every day, all of that, but my inner world was
completely different. That's awesome. When was that?
That was 8 years ago now.
Okay.
Yeah. And I get the same reflections from my clients. You know, I guess it does mostly show up, I would say, in intimate relationships with family and partners. One of my clients who's quite introverted, and she was the youngest sibling in a large family, and they're now all adults now, but that was the role that she continued to play. And she was quite reserved, a little bit more introverted, just went along to get along. And as she, and that really slowly was killing her over a lifetime, in the sense that she was not connected with her authentic self and her authentic expression.
Or any feelings.
Yes, and that was definitely a part of it. And so when she went through this psilocybin experience afterwards, she was starting to just ever so gently just assert herself more, even if it came in the way of just being able to say no to something that was asked of her. If it was she had a habit of saying yes and spreading herself too thin, becoming resentful, and neglecting her own needs in order to help her parents or siblings, you know, nieces, nephews, all that. When she started to just put her needs first, because she recognized, like, I need to fill my own cup before I can serve anybody else. When she started doing that, her family was quite astonished in the beginning.
Yeah, mine was as well.
Yeah, and so that can be...
I ruined my marriage that way. Basically over time. Yeah. I mean, there were many contributing factors, but yeah, me speaking up for myself was, the foot out the door eventually.
Yeah, it can definitely shake up relationship dynamics if people are used to you being a certain way and you start to show up a little differently. For
sure. And so would you say it's really not useful, but it's a really beautiful contribution to an unraveling or an unwinding or a shedding process. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. I mean, it's a catalyst for that process, for that kind of growth. And so maybe you would have been undergoing this kind of process just over a much longer time scale, like a 10-year process.
Yeah. So it accelerates it.
It accelerates it quite a bit.
And do some people do it on a repeated basis? I noticed that you have different offerings, and depending on the psilocybin facilitator, obviously they present it differently depending on their practice. But I know that you've had a sound healing event that I knew about in the past spring, and then you had it again in the fall. But you work with people consistently between that time too, and they are on a regular basis doing microdosing or macrodosing with you. Is that also available?
So when people do macrodose journeys with me, it is pretty. I have one client so far who's considering coming back after 6 months.
Okay.
But
that was my next question about time.
Yeah, it's so individual. I don't see most people sitting with any sort of psychedelics, whether it's psilocybin or otherwise, more frequently than, say, every. It depends on where one is in their healing path. Sometimes there's a period of kind of increased use in the beginning, say 6-month intervals, maybe sooner than that, 4 to 6 months. It's not like a regular cadence or anything. It's kind of like, okay, I'm feeling like I want to address this now, or I'm looking to, sit with the medicine with this intention now. And so sometimes it can be, but then oftentimes it'll be years in between. And so, or people are working with different medicines, we'll sit with psilocybin, and then maybe they feel called to sit with ayahuasca, or then maybe MDMA, that sort of thing.
Ketamine.
Yes, ketamine is in there. And then in terms of microdosing, I provide support and guidance for people who are either microdosing on their own. Typically when tapering off of a medication, a psychiatric medication as a support, I like to, I think there's a wonderful use case for it to be used as a bridge therapy when tapering off of, say, an SSRI, SNRI, something like that. And you can start the microdosing when you're just getting at the end of that taper, and to help you at the very end of it.
Okay.
And smooth that what can be another destabilizing process, and then come off of the microdose, and then that can actually optimize people for if and when they want to sit with a macrodose, because the antidepressants are known to blunt the effects of psilocybin.
They blunt the effects of everything. That's the whole point.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. They're really medicines that were designed for Robin Carhart Harris is a famous psychedelic researcher who has a wonderful paper on this called A Tale of Two Receptors. But antidepressants work on slightly different serotonin receptor subtype than psilocybin does. And one theory is that the antidepressants allow you to cope passively. So if you're just stuck in a situation where you can't really change a lot of the external factors, then it can help with that, or at the beginning of change. But then when you're ready to make some more significant changes in your life, take a more active coping strategy, that's where psilocybin differs. So I like to paint it, compare and contrast that way sometimes for people.
For sure.
The cadence really is so individual.
But I also feel like with a SSRI or a SNRI, and I speak from personal experience too, that for me, the coping strategy is to mute, right? To mute whatever your experience might be so that your experience is less intensity. So I don't feel like you would move, the intentions are differently, right? You would move in that direction based upon the intensity of your life and the fact that you need it to be more within a reasonable range, right? And for a macrodose, you're looking for a very brief window of an intense experience so that you can break out of and really look at, more authentic ways of relating to yourself.
Yes, that is a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah. So let's see. What else do I want to ask you? What role does the facilitator play before, during, and after a psilocybin journey, and how does it differ from more traditional therapeutic roles?
So the approach that I take and that all of us were taught, I think most facilitators.
Where did you go to school?
Intertrek is the program that I trained in.
Okay.
And the stance is a non-directive approach. And so we're, much more of a space holder for the process that's unfolding for you. And so it's really about curating a sense of safety and trust so that one can surrender fully to the experience. And, I weave in the crystal sound bowls in the beginning. So just working with sound as the guide, and then weaving into, psilocybin therapy in particular is music, usually guided with music, and music that's specifically tailored for the psychedelic experience. And so there's usually not any words or anything like that. It's usually instrumental of a particular flavor that is conducive to the emotionality of the experience. And so really it's like an extensive sound guided meditation in a lot of ways. And then afterwards in the integration, it really is more of a stance of listening, reflective or compassionate inquiry. I'm really not trying to project my ideas of what I think is good for you with the next steps forward or anything like that. It's really about calling that forth, eliciting that, or oftentimes it's there and just needs to be voiced. And then maybe that accountability piece, if people are looking for that, which a lot of people are. That's where I have the kind of optional ongoing integration sessions for that. And in those sessions, I take a little bit more of like a coaching role. Mostly again through reflective inquiry, because I spent the first 10 years of my career as a physician telling people what to do.
Yeah, I was gonna say we're gonna get to that, right?
Giving advice, recommendations, all of that, and it never lands in the same way as when someone tells me what they think they need to do. From when it comes from within.
Yeah,
it has to come from within. Otherwise, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
And so I would talk and it'd go in one ear and out the other.
You'd see him the next time.
Like my children.
You're like, how's that drinking problem going?
Yeah, exactly. Or how's your, oftentimes before surgery, you're asking about smoking, because it's a contraindication for a lot of things, elective joint replacement and that sort of thing. So all the time I think like, wow, I would love a future where we can work with patients as a preoperative, intervention to help people optimize before surgery. And
or
then they
even
might find
before they need the surgery.
They may find they don't even need the surgery anymore. Yeah.
I know.
Soul surgery.
Well, it just goes, that's the whole reason why I've gotten into leaning into counseling and addictions, but also into prevention, because I feel like they have to work hand in hand. I think I hope we're finally getting to a place where we've, at least in my opinion, we are at a place of awakening and allowing more of the divinity, more of the feminine to rise up and nurture this world. And in doing so, I feel that the Eastern and Western methodologies have to work together, right? That prevention really is something that is a key missing ingredient, especially here in the States. And more people being educated on that, I think, is the future. I hope is the future, because a lot of people profit off of us not being well.
Yes, yes. I'm very passionate about this as well, that, I think it's well known, or, I think we're in the midst of a massive awakening
Yes.
to how we have a sick care system that is not incentivized to keep us healthy. And so it really is incumbent upon. This is where I talk a lot about the sovereign individual, at least when it comes to looking out for your own health, because the government and society and our culture is not going to do that for you. Mm-hmm. No one's coming to save us.
No, we have to save ourselves.
Yes. Together, though.
Let's talk about the actual heart opening experience for somebody who is listening or watching, who has never had any experience. Could you articulate kind of what that process is like? Because it's a very heart opening, to me, heart chakra medicine, right? Mm-hmm. So as opposed to, there are other, indigenous cultures that use other plant medicines that have different properties and different spirits attached, right? So could you talk a little bit more about psilocybin for that reason? Besides all of the brain stuff that it does, that is great for us.
Yeah, one experience that seems to be universal is this connection to love. But love, not in this sort of human 3D expression of it, but there are no words to really capture it. It's an ineffable experience. And so I struggle to come up with words to capture it, but it's connecting. Some people describe it as connecting with a divine source of love. The love that creates and circulates all of existence, source consciousness, the love that has allowed you to, and every one of your ancestors in your lineage, to lead you up to this here now moment. Universal love. And so it is the experience is like bathing in this love for an eternity, infinite love, because our sense of time and space dissolves in these experiences. Mm. And so people will come out of the experience feeling much more connected to that source of love, which is such a generative energy. It's like, oh, I'm plugged back in again to the web of life that creates and sustains me. And it's this abundant, ever-flowing, never run out of it. Mm-hmm. It's really just a matter of whether or not I'm attuned to it or not, which is why the daily practices afterwards are so vital. Immersing ourselves in nature are so vital, especially in our modern day lives. And we can be so, I have a love-hate technology, or love-hate relationship with technology, like I think all of us do, right?
I get so passive-aggressive with Instagram, I can't even tell you. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm loving it. Now I'm like, no.
I mean, it's miraculous for connecting us to one another, right? We, again, I think it's such a brand new technology. Mm-hmm. Our nervous systems are not wired for it.
And so much swiping. Yes. So much swiping.
Yes. The dopamine, hijacking, all of that. And
the addiction. Mm-hmm. Because of the dopamine.
Oh, yeah. And so I say that humanity, we're just in this process of awakening to just how powerful these tools are. I believe, like every tool, it's ultimately neutral. It's just how we use it.
For sure.
And so...
and the boundaries around it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How did you know you wanted to do this? Like, did you know that you wanted to do this when you got into medical school? Not that far back.
No.
Okay.
If you told me that this is what I would be doing at this point in my life, I don't know what I would have thought. I mean,
What does that mean, Tracy?
I mean, when I entered medical school, I had never even had really a psychedelic experience. The only way I'd altered my consciousness at that point was with alcohol, which is a sedative, cannabis, which was used very unconsciously, usually with alcohol at that point. And I had experimented with salvia divinorum. It was actually legal where I went to medical school.
Huh.
It's
I didn't know that
plant.
I didn't know that it was illegal.
I think it's since become illegal. I think it was they actually were changing the regulations on it, I think, this summer that I was graduating from my senior year of college.
But that's hilarious because you can just go to Home Depot and buy a plant.
There are many different, yeah. No,
It would be like making lavender
like
illegal.
poppies.
Yeah.
So with opium. It's just absurd to make a plant illegal, if you ask me.
Agreed.
But that's changing, hopefully, slowly. This is when I trace back the desire to go into medicine, to go into some sort of work in the healing profession from the time I was 8 years old. And I just wanted to help people to decrease suffering in the world that I was witnessing and already attuned to as a child. And there are many ways to do that. I loved science. I was fascinated by the human body, all of that. And so it meant becoming a doctor. But when I finally matriculated into medical school and I actually got to see how medicine is practiced, I was honestly turned off and a bit disillusioned with all of it. And not all of it, though. There are areas where it's incredible. Mm-hmm. And truly miraculous. And so that's part of why I was drawn to surgery a little bit more in terms of the tangible benefits that we could have in someone's life that you just can't do anywhere else. I feel like surgery is where Western allopathic medicine really excels. Mm-hmm. And particularly in the field of orthopedic surgery, which is what I trained in. If you break a bone, you break your leg, it's really miraculous what we can do. You can be walking the same day after a surgery where you make a couple of incisions in your leg. We discovered a way to insert this titanium rod into the center of a femur, and then you can, depending on the pattern of your fracture, you can be walking the same day. And that actually saves someone's life, where there are still places in the world that if that happens, there's no equipment, no surgeon, and you're bedbound for a couple of weeks. You develop a deep vein thrombosis that can turn into a pulmonary embolism and you die. So actually life-saving procedures.
Yeah. Well, that's how medicine came about.
Yes.
It was for acute trauma.
Yes. Like that is how Western medicine really developed, was in response to acute trauma, actually on the battlefield. But as I went through my training, I saw all of the ways that Western, modern style medicine excels. But there are so many ways where we were leaving people bereft, who are seeking out care and for what ultimately is, in my assessment of things, what is intergenerational trauma. Mm. And so,
talk more about that.
Yeah, the way, it wasn't that long ago that most of us on the planet, we come from families that experienced extreme trauma.
Yes. Like
global warfare, civilizational warfare trauma.
Potato famines and shit. Like, I look at my, not 21andMe, Ancestry.com history. I joke around about this all the time. And have you ever read that? Have you done that? It tells you all the history of what your family, and when I read that, it's like, how in the world did I make it here?
It's a miracle.
It is a miracle. that any of us are here.
It really is a miracle. It is. It really is a testament to the human spirit.
It totally is. Sorry, I didn't mean to hijack that. I knew you were going somewhere.
War, famine. We just went through a global pandemic, but compared to plagues of the past, all of it together. And we carry that. We carry that in our lineages, and it really manifests now within families, particularly. And it manifests in all sorts of different social ills because we're carrying this unintegrated pain really at a nervous system level and deep within our psyches and our souls and our spirits. And so and we're not even fully conscious of it.
Because it was just how our parents were or how my mom is, and we normalized it.
Yeah, and we also just didn't have the privilege or the resources to be able to start to do this kind of work, because when you're living hand to mouth and you're just in survival mode, like that's just, we accept a different
way. The circumstances, yeah, for sure.
So as we transition out of that, hopefully, that those stages of human evolution, I hope we're transitioning out of it, but we can still see a lot of this playing out.
Yes.
That we start to wake up to, okay, how is this playing out in my life personally? And how can I integrate this? How can I process this? How can I fully accept it, welcome it for the wisdom, and then actually come into a place of gratitude for all of it? And that is a journey of a lifetime. It takes, this healing doesn't happen. I always say it doesn't happen. It happens over generations. It's generational. And so, really what happens is like we inherit these ways of being, and then we just become conscious of like, hey, maybe I don't want to live this way. Maybe I can consciously choose a different way. And so not everyone is interested in that endeavor, but a lot of people are. And so it's really cool right now to see people figuring this out.
It is. Would you find, are there a lot of facilitators in the state of Oregon?
I think something like 300.
Is there a tremendous demand?
Gosh, it's hard for me. Most of the demand actually comes from out of state right now. And I have my theories for why that is. I think part of it is because mushrooms are such a part of the culture here.
Everyone's like, we're fine.
I got my friends. I got my source. Like my friend who grows them, and it's such a part of the culture here. So I find a lot of the people who are seeking out above ground services are people who come from areas where it's not a part of the culture. So plenty of people from the East Coast, from the Midwest, from Texas, internationally. So yeah, it's people who either don't have a personal connection or it's not part of their culture, or a lot of people, they do have a connection or a friend. Maybe they've even sat with it recreationally before, but they're waking up to some deeper traumas that they would like to address, or frankly, they're a little bit afraid of journeying more, knowing that they have that unprocessed trauma, and so they're looking to have a safe space for where like this is the intention, and I'm looking to be held here.
Yeah, and the oversight that comes along with that.
Yes.
And maybe a little bit of the nurturing and witnessing, or protection too.
Yes. Yeah. And also I think it's nice sometimes to be with someone who's not part of your inner circle or your normal community. Sometimes it's safer to just bring all your stuff to someone else and then have that be there, and then you can show up, and you don't necessarily, so a lot of people feel like they're sometimes, I wish it wasn't like this, but they're like, I don't want to burden my friends or my husband or with this. I would like to, it actually feels really good to just invest in myself this way and like really take care of this here.
And leave it here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. How do you think society can better embrace and incorporate psychedelic healing into the mainstream conversation around mental health and wellness?
How can we better embrace psychedelics in this more global endeavor of mental wellness or mental health and healing and wellness? I think a lot of it, I would say, my answer to that would be just to be better educated. And that oftentimes where I get a little bit, I have a lot of patience for it, but I see this all the time where there's a lot of reactionary judgments that are based on misconception. And and which is fine. You know, it's fine to have those judgments. And if you don't feel called to sit with psychedelics, I don't think a lot of people are meant to sit with psychedelics. But I find that is a little frustrating for someone who maybe is feeling called to sit with psychedelics, who really does have some significant adverse childhood experiences or traumas, and to make space for those people, for the healing process to unfold for them. And to not perpetuate, this is a buzzword that I don't love invoking, but misinformation around it. And so if you don't have personal experience with it, or you haven't learned, a stance that I would love to invite people to inhabit when it comes to this stuff is one of curiosity. And to seek out reputable sources for your information as well. There's a lot of not so great sources, and promote those sources too. And recognize too that these medicines, particularly the earthbound ones, the plant, animal, fungi medicines, have been around for millennia, and that all people, it's indigenous to all peoples. And so this is medicine that was actually ours, that we were working with, but that they became systematically repressed. So that, you know, your own individual connection to spirit, to source, to your higher self was taken away
from you.
and you then had to go through a mediator for that, so that they could control the messaging. And so really it's about, it's again like a deconditioning process, and recognizing like how much of what our thoughts and beliefs around psychedelics are actually propaganda, government propaganda, and really it's up to each and every person to kind of navigate that for themselves. And I also am like, I'm not too concerned about encouraging people to embrace it. It's like, oh, well, the results speak for themselves.
Do you think more states are going to come around? Yeah, you do.
Yeah, I mean, I know of a lot of initiatives, you know, grassroots, citizen-driven initiatives, much like the one in Oregon. There's one right now in Massachusetts and in a few other states. And I think that's a wonderful path. I mean, it's great that we live in a federal system where states can kind of go their own way, and it's almost like individual little experiments, which I think is a good thing for our country to experiment in that way. And And it seems to be the way that culture is moving.
Mm-hmm.
I think we had this explosion of pharmaceutical innovation in the last century that, again, was miraculous in so many ways. You know, penicillin, antibiotics, the very biomedical kind of reductionist approach to so many different conditions. And we tried to do that naturally. We tried to approach that same methodology to mental health with the chemical imbalance theory, which has since been debunked pretty thoroughly. But again, that narrative hasn't really, I think, spread to the wider public quite yet. Like, so many people still believe in the chemical. I have a chemical imbalance, that's why I'm prescribed this medicine, without knowing that it's actually been debunked. And they say it takes 20 years for new medical research to become distributed and become the new standard of care. Yeah, which is way too long. I don't want to wait 20 years to feel better.
I hope that's not our future, because I feel like technology is accelerating the pace.
Well, I do, again, going back to the social media piece.
Right.
We don't have this centralized narrative anymore, or this centralized control, rather, of narratives. We have this decentralized. And so truth to me can emerge in that environment much more quickly than it can in the old system. And I think that there are a lot of people waking up to who've tried the pharmaceutical route for a lot of these things and are experiencing maybe it helps temporarily, but long term it doesn't help, or there are pretty significant side effects. And they don't like being dependent on something. You know, we have this threat of a port, the longshoremen threatening strikes at the ports. Well, I was thinking about the implications of that, and I was thinking, what about medicines? Like, that's going to impact how all of the supply chains for medicines. And I think after the pandemic as well, when we experienced that, there has been this sort of groundswell of people looking to be more self-sourced. As much as possible. They see the resilience in that and the benefits of that. And so this is kind of part of it where, wow, it's a paradigm shift from I am broken and I need to take this, or deficient in some way, and I need to take this pill, to I had a normal, healthy response to something that happened in my life, or the environment that I grew up in, or maybe the current environment that I'm living in. Like, maybe I can change some of those things and I'll feel, and it will manifest differently in my body and in my mental state and that sort of thing. So it's just a different paradigm there. And I find a lot of people who are much more attracted to that latter paradigm that I described.
It's much more empowering. I'm checking the time. Okay. So how can we incorporate more love, healing, and self-awareness into our lives? And how does psilocybin facilitation contribute to this larger mission of personal and collective well-being?
Gosh, I just think a lot of it boils down to getting out of our own way. That it's in our true nature to be in that state of love, of wholeness, well-being. And so again, but you know, again, going back to the default mode, which is one of focused on our survival, which is has evolved to disproportionately pay attention to the negative in life, that starts to overtake our true nature. And so it's really about cultivating the space to just slow down and come into deep remembrance. And ideally, it's a daily practice, which takes immense intention.
It does.
And attention.
And effort.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And integrity in showing up.
Mm-hmm. And also extending ourselves plenty of grace when that doesn't happen.
Yes.
That's okay and beautiful in its own way. What's coming through also is that we get so distracted by all sorts of things that I think deep down we know what's actually important day to day, but we need constant reminders because we're always, that's just human, our nature as well, to forget. And so I think it helps tremendously too to be just plugged in with other people who are on this path.
Mm-hmm.
A part of this process too is recognizing when we're no longer in alignment with certain relationships or behaviors or that sort of thing, and being able to just fully let go of that to welcome in this new way of being. It is a new way, just like we talked about before, because we inherit all of these ways of understanding the world that are, scarcity driven and fear driven, and so yeah, it is just like a really incredible time to be alive, where
It sure is.
yeah, we, like, as humans, I mean, just what we've been able to accomplish, and yet the problems and challenges we still have ahead of us.
Or that we've created trying to solve another problem.
Yes. That's what my husband always says. He's like, that's what we humans do. We create solutions to problems, and then it creates more problems. So it creates solutions to those problems. Gives us something to do.
Yeah. It gives our ego something to do for sure.
Yeah. And so, yeah, but hopefully, as people start to experiment with these things, and I always encourage just experimentation on oneself, just try and see. When you see the beneficial effects of taking this kind of different approach to life, it's just amazing what you experience. It's just a whole different way of perceiving reality.
I agree wholeheartedly. Thank you so much for sharing your experience with it. I really appreciate it. I love hearing you talk. So I really nerd out when you share. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Oh, I'm glad you enjoy.
Oh, yes, I do. So thank you again. And I hope to have you on again.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in and supporting this podcast. Your presence here means the world to me, and I'm truly grateful for your time and energy. If this conversation resonated with you or sparked any questions, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. I love hearing from each of you. Your insights, experiences, and curiosities always enrich this space. It's important to remember that trauma, often unseen and unacknowledged, can keep us from living fully in our joy. Through my intuitive healing process, I help release the weight of generational trauma, empowering you to reconnect with your true self and experience life in greater harmony. If you feel called to explore this deeper work, I invite you to book a one-on-one intuitive session, or even embark on a personalized journey with a Phoenix Immersion, a 2-day retreat designed to support profound transformation. You can find all the details below. For those who've liked, subscribed, or left comments already, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your engagement means everything, and I'm deeply grateful for the connection we're building in this community. If you haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing so. I'm excited for all the healing and transformation we'll continue to explore together. As always, I'm forever grateful for you, and I cannot wait to see what unfolds next. Take care, and until next time.